Daf Pei, holding in Tosus. Really, just in the Gemara. Then we'll get back to Tosus. The Gemara wanted to bring a right to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds the case of the child by the Yisov when it says Chomsei Tomei doesn't make Tomei to burn. It means only Tomei that you're not permitted to eat. It's called Tomei. But what would a case be where which you would actually burn the truma? So decided the case. You have an Isa, you have a dough, and in the house you have rodents and you have frogs. And then you find particles in the dough, and you're not sure if it's frog particles or it's rodent particles. If it's rodent, it's tummy, because it's a sheretz. If it's sardeya, it's not matame. What do you do? So the Mishnah says that if the majority of the crawling creatures in the house are shrotzim, then it's tummy. But if the majority are svardim, then it's Torah. Okay? So Rashi explained why. What's the difference? What's this robe and that robe? So it says this robe is Ruben the Isakama, we discussed yesterday. Of course, it could be factually quantified. The other is, it's a what? It's a perception. It's based on our perception of reality. But it can't be actually quantified as a reality. The robe of most children, right? They touch the dough, or whatever it is. Or most children, they play in locations where, and therefore they touch rodents. Because there's so many variables that could determine yes or no, whatever it may be. But this is factual. Factually, the majority of the crawling creatures in this location are rodents. It's like the 9 shops, kosher, 1 not. You find meat on the street. Factually, probability says it came from a kosher store. Therefore, the meat in the street is kosher. That's achorat lahatos, right? Okay. So the Gemara says, Tanya Kavos Rabbi Yochanan. Now, just the introduction to this. The halachas, and David asked the question yesterday, which is Tosa's question from Nida, on that base. The Gemara says that in Sota, what happens if you have kiddushin stira? A husband forewarns his wife she shouldn't sequester herself with a certain man. She defies his warning, she sequesters herself. She stays behind closed doors long enough they could have had relations. What's her status? She's considered a Sota, suspected adulteress. And she has to have, the only way she's permitted the husband, she has to have a sota. Unless she drinks the water of the sota, she's not permitted to the husband. Okay. What happens that, and she claims her innocence. So you give her, what happens if you have an Eid Echad after the story? He comes and he claims he looked through the peephole and he saw they committed adultery. Is she still eligible to drink the sota? Howard, what do you say? The halacha is no. So Gemara asks a question in Sota. But the Dovish you need 2 witnesses. Gemara says because there's raglayim in the Dovish. Because there's circumstantial evidence that she did commit adultery. So since the raglayim in therefore the Torah in this particular instance even believes in Eid Echad. Not to put her to death or anything, but in terms of that she's no longer eligible for the Sota, because there's raglayim l'davish, therefore she does not drink the sota. That's what the Gemara says. Okay? She's not convicted. Because of the circumstantial evidence, that's why she's not permitted. Because she was forewarned. Regarding what? If the husband lives with her now, we'll get malchus. Well, he has to divorce in either case. He has to divorce her. Even if you don't have the Eid Echad. Even if you don't have the Eid Echad, he has to divorce. He divorces her. It's not permitted to her. This is purely relating to the Sota. You only drink Sota to determine. There's no basis to determine anything. We believe the Eid Echad, so therefore there's nothing determined. Okay? That's the Gemara. Okay, well, let's get to Tosus and Nida. The halacha is Savitum Shusay Yochid is Vari Tomei. Right? Why is it Vari Tomei? Because what is the case of Sota, the 2 individuals, and they go into a location, nobody's there but themselves. And the Torah says, in this situation, it says, Nitma'o. Right? She's become Tomei. Nitma'o. She's become defiled. It's a Sofek. Rishus HaYochid, because there are only 2 people. Nitma'o. So from here we see, Savitum Rishus HaYochid, something which is also Tumah. Rishus HaYochid, Yivadi Tomei, until it's determined differently. So a person goes into a field, nobody else is there but him. He has a question, even though he has a cheskes tyra. Before he went to the field, And he doesn't. Did he pass over a grave? There was a grave somewhere in that field. He doesn't know whether he passed over the grave or not. So if not for learning from Sot, I'd say you have a Sofik, you have a Cheskes Tairo, you go after Chazaka. If you go after Chazaka, what's the halacha? He's still Torah. But since we see from Sota that we don't go after Chazaka, we don't go after Chazaka, so there, of course, we say she's Tameya, so she's Tomei. So Tosas asks a question. The reason why I don't go after Chazaka regarding the Sota is because the Ragalim Dover actually weakened the Chazaka. But this man over here, what weakened the Chazaka? Nothing weakened the Chazaka. So they're not really comparable. That's Tosas' question. That's the question we asked yesterday. No, because you have the circumstantial evidence that actually almost destroys the Chazaka. She has no Cheskes Kashrus anymore. A woman behaves this way, she doesn't have a Cheskes Kashrus. That's Tosas' question of Bezim and Aleph. Tosas' answer is, even though she doesn't have a Cheskes Kashrus, that she's definitely permitted, but at least let it be a Sofik. Right? She has a Cheskes Sofik. But we say Sofik Yavarik, we treat it as a definite indulgence. So even though she should have a Cheskes Sofik, but yet we say she's a Vadai, so we see that at no level do I address Chazaka. So that's what I draw from Sota. Okay, that's what Tosas answers. So now a Sota, we're talking about people who have intelligence. Now that we something we should say Yochid is Tomei, so the cases have to be comparable. Now, there's a question if it's Yeshbo Dasli Shoel, Imo Dasli Shoel. Right? The people who are involved in this process, which creates a subject, if you'd ask them, they will tell you we know or we don't know. That's called Yeshbo Dasli Shoel. Well, what about, said a person goes in the field. Did you go pass over the grave? Did you not pass over the grave? What about the child? We have a question. Is the child tummy or not tummy? And he touched the dough or didn't touch it. What the whole revolves around somebody. Amo Dasli Shoel. He's an unintelligent child, small child, right? So in that case, it's not comparable to Sota. The kiddushin has to be similar to the Sota situation. In that case, we go after Chazaka. So we have to Chazaka. So why is it Tameh? Why do we say that the dough is Tameh? If we're dealing with a child, it's Amo Dasli Shoel, right? So the Gemara says, Tani Koser Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Dvarim Amo Dasli Shoel. The two cases where really on a Torah level we should go after Chazaka. Because the case we're dealing with, the individual has no dasli. If you ask him, he doesn't know what you're talking about. He's a child. But they gave it a status as if it does. So they've on a Torah level, what is this? It's a Sofek, and Chazaka rules that it's Torah. Rabbinically, we say it's tummy. So if something's tummy or rabbinically, could you burn it? You're not permitted to burn it. Therefore, when the Chacham say tummy, what does tummy mean? Tummy means you're not permitted to eat it. Doesn't mean sorry. This is the Mishnah we're quoting, that this supports Rabbi Yochanan. When the Chacham say tummy by the child is Eimbo Dasli Shoel. And what's the other way, Eimbo Dasli Shoel? You go after Chazaka. I have a question. Did he touch, did he not touch? Go after Chazaka, correct? The Tyra, the dough. Yet it says, what's the halacha? It says tummy. What does tummy mean? Tummy means tummy drabanan. So if something on a Torah level is Torah, and it's tummy drabanan, are you permitted to burn it? You're not permitted to burn it. So therefore, this supports Rabbi Yochanan that what? That it's only when it says tummy. Tummy doesn't mean lisoref, to burn, but rather it means not to eat. That's what the word tummy means. No. People who come to these things very careful. They would ask a shiloh. The rabbi would say, you don't burn it. You don't. It's the whole discussion from Yudal and on, the first paragraph of Sochem. That's in Reb Chanina Tzkanakonim. There's certain cases which are you permitted even to burn things with other things. You're not permitted. Because if something's a suffix, you're not permitted to burn it. Okay? No, yeah, same thing. Very good. Because if it's Ruba Chazak, Ruba Odif, it has nothing with Das B'Shoyel. Right? Rove says, the child, according to Rashi, he's holding the dough, and Rashi says he definitely took it. According to the Chum, Rove says what? Rove says he's what? He's tummy. So if he's tummy, definitely touched it. What does this have to do with Das B'Shoyel? Over there, we don't know what happened. If you have a suffix, okay, there's a suffix. But if you, according to what we said, according to the Chachamim, or with Reb Meir, the meters command the lesser. The meter doesn't exist. So I'm pitting a Rove against the Chazaka. Ruba Chazak, Ruba Odif. And that's Tosaf's question here. The answer is because this Rove, Tosaf explains, is a weak Rove. It's not a real, it's a weak Rove. The Rove of the child, that he's definitely tummy. If it would be a bona fide Rove, the Gemara couldn't say what it's saying right now. The Tosaf will explain. There's a question why it's weak. Either because, as Rashi says, because it can't be quantified, or the other reason is because, Moshe has the Gemara says in Choros, Moshe has a shayla on this. The custom week. I don't know how many people here sometimes make their own eggs. So the minhag Yisrael is that when you make an egg, you check the egg. Even if the eggs have been candled, right? You always check for blood spot. Why? Today, most eggs are what? Most eggs are not fertilized. So if it's a not fertilized egg, doesn't make it. If you have an egg which is fertilized, right? So even if you have a tiny blood spot, even the egg which doesn't have blood, it's considered nevela. The whole egg is also. Even if you remove the blood spot, the rest of the egg, you're not permitted to eat. The Gemara says in Kulin, Shoda Tichlu B'Kula, that the impurity affects every aspect of that egg. No. Because it's a living entity. It's like it's equivalent of it's like an embryo. It's an embryo. It's an embryo. But if it's safnadar, if it's not fertilized, then the egg is what? So the blood is blood. The rest of the egg is permitted. So let's say you'd mix it. You definitely have shishim. You have endlessly more than shishim. So if you go after Rove, why even check it? Right? Why should I be concerned? Right? So that's the question. So, and especially if you have candled eggs. Yeah, right? Yeah, years ago, if you remember, we used to. But today, all eggs are candled. Very rarely would you find a blood spot in an egg. Right? But yet, it happens. You find once in a while. But still, it's rare. But yet, minig Yisrael is we check eggs. We check eggs. Why do you check eggs? So Moshe says in the tshuva, because the Gemara says, Rov atoli b'maisa. A rov that's dependent on we have to do an action. That rov is a weak rov. The Gemara says in the chorus. Right? So the question is, explain what it means. Okay. Rov that's dependent on an action. Did somebody do something? Did somebody not do something? The child, did he touch? Did he not touch? Did he go into the trash with his sheretz? Did he touch? No. It's weak. Because there's so many variables. It could be the circumstance. Yes, this child is different. Each child's different. It's not simple. Rov famous ksheros, that's a fact. It's unrelated to anybody's action. That's just a reality in animals, the health of animals. The majority of animals, healthy animals, and not healthy animals. Are they defective, not defective? It's not dependent on anybody doing any action.
Why? What's it going to be rove animals and rove eggs?
Can I ask you a question? The sun rises and sunset every day. Is that rove totally Maisa? Sure it is. Because you have to open your eyes to see if the sun is shining.
But what's the thing that in the eggs?
No. That's exactly the same thing with the eggs. That's I'm telling you. That is the eggs. That is the eggs. But I'm saying rove ksheros. Rove animals are ksheros. Right? They're not treifa. That's not dependent on an action. That's a reality. Are most animals healthy animals or the defective animals? So, wait. Okay? So over there. So Moshe says, therefore, since it has to be candled, the reason, most eggs, there are blood spots, except if they have a system, they take out those eggs. So the majority of the eggs are not blood spots, is only because they've been candled. Because there's a process that removes those eggs. They may have missed it. Whenever you deal with, there's an intervention, that already, weakens the reality. You do, but there are. It happens. It happens. Even you don't know. How do you know? With they still candle. It's still you find. So you can imagine how if they wouldn't candle. How do you know? You're such an expert. Your degrees in undergraduate engineering. You know how many blood spots are in unfertilized eggs?
One company checked and they got lots of blood spots. People stopped buying their eggs. It's not like companies very about it. It's not exactly like like relying on.
I know, I understand that though.
But it's the action, though. The action affects the conscience of that.
Whenever you have to have an action, right? So something which is just a fact. That's fact. That's like etched in stone. Something not a fact. It's based. Whether they do it, it doesn't make a difference, right?
But it can be effective.
Because it's determined by intervention. Intervention is a weaker chazaka. That's what Gemara says. That's a weaker chazaka. Therefore, Moshe says, therefore you have to check. If you didn't check, and so you can rely on bittul. That's bittul. We say normally in batal lechatchila, right? You're not permitted. If you know there's blood in the egg, you can't scramble the egg because you mevatel blood. Even if it's one, it's 10,000 to 1. Doesn't make a difference. If there's a reason to check and you don't, you're doing the wrong thing. Because you should check. If there's no concern whatsoever, you have rov, there's no reason to check. But since there's rov atoli b'masa, there is a reason to check. That's a weak rov. That's what Moshe writes in the tshuva. Therefore, that's the reason why you should check the eggs. For that reason. You ever take a look? You buy cookies, Hasidic cookies. There's Oberlander cookies. You ever see? They have. So it says in Yiddish. The eggs have been checked. They've checked the eggs. So that's the reason. Most companies, they don't check eggs, right? Because again, it's not a problem. You know, it's interesting. We hold halacha in batal lechatchila. What happens if a person goes and intentionally is in batal You're not permitted to eat it. Rabbinically, they penalize you. You have 100 pieces of kosher meat. Now you have an extra guest. So you go to AMP, buy an extra portion, throw it in there. So you eat. Right? What's the halacha? On a Torah level, it's subsumed. Because now you can't locate the AMP meat. Right? But because you did it intentionally, we penalize you. We say, we don't apply the principle of bittul. You're not permitted to eat any of the meat. That's rabbinical. The rice is bottle. They penalize the person. Okay? So now, the question is, let's say you have a company which they manufacture for Jews. For Jews. Jews come, they manufacture for Jews. That's the majority of the clientele. And they rely on bittul. They intentionally are mevatel. The Jew buys the product, even though they're not permitted to eat that product. This is based on your idea. What about a Jewish company? The majority of the clientele are goyim. To goyim makes no difference. Just that happens to be the recipe. The recipe is they put in a certain amount of whatever it is, non-kosher ingredient, and they add that, but it's definitely shishim. Now, a Jew wants to buy that product. Even though the Jew intentionally was mevatel the iser, it's not a problem. Because he wasn't mevatel that should be permitted. Right? It happens, that's the recipe. That's the recipe. It has a certain percentage of non-kosher ingredient. But who do we do it for? So the Jew should be able to permit it to eat it? It wasn't done on behalf of Jews. No. No, but it's not bittul. It's not because he wants to subsume the iser. It's not because he wants to subsume the iser. That it's subsumed, it's just the reality. A person who adds the piece, what happens if inadvertently you add something? Falls in. You're permitted to eat it. Here, why is that percentage non-kosher ingredient in there? Because this product sells better to the... Yeah, it was intentional. But does it have to because I want to bottle it? Because I want to make it permitted? No, it's not. My clientele are goyim. They're goyim. Correct. Right. That the Isser should be subsumed. Definitely. You have Shishim. Factually, you have the right ratio. The ratio is 60 to 1. It's more than 60 to 1. A Jew, even the Jews make the product. The Jews manufacture it. And you have, of course you can eat it. You could eat it. Yeah, as long as the ratios are right ratios, it's not a problem. You could eat it. Not a problem.
I know, or you should just make on everything. No, I'm saying, but some food coloring and stuff like that.
No, there's other things. Done for a maimed, gelatin is not simple, of course.
I'm saying food coloring.
It's also. It's an essential ingredient that makes a difference in the taste. It's a spice. It's a separate discussion whether mareh, whether color, whether that's whether it has value or doesn't have value, whether that's considered something of substance or not substance. Okay.
You're right.
No. The only way the meat can get in the street, factually, probability, the meat is kosher. Because it's a 9 to 1. Of course, how did the meat get into the street? Okay? But over there it's different. Over there, here the dough has a cheskes tyre. There the meat, I don't even know what the meat is. Is it kosher meat, not kosher meat? See, if here I wouldn't have a chazaka, even if it's a weaker rope, it's not a problem. But over there, I just don't know where to meet. I'm not dealing a rope pitted against the chazaka. Right? Over here, why am I burning it? Because I have a rope. But if the rope is a weak rope and I have a chazaka, the chazaka says it retains its. So I have a question. You can't burn it. That's why you can't burn it. Okay? There's what? Vodacheres. There's another case where it's able dasli shoel, even though dasli shoel, nevertheless, we treat it, it's tummy. What's the case? Tinukah damorim. So if that's the case of the child, we have the young child. The old acheres mai iso shebsoch habayis. Ba'anatar negolu mamashkim tmeim sham. You have chickens peck, right? And let's say in the house you had mashkim, which were tameim. You have dough, which is tor, and you have liquid, which is tamei, and the chicken, it goes and it drinks. Let's say there's water on its beak, and then it pecks on the dough with a wet beak. So if the beak was wet, right, and that any droplet dropped on that dough, the dough's tamei, right? Now I find holes in the dough, which indicated the chicken pecked. When did it peck? Did it peck before it drank or after it drank? And even after it drank, maybe the liquid already dried. It pecked with a dry beak. So what is exactly the status of the what of the dough? It's have a suffix. The dough has what? Has a chazaka, has a cheskes tyra. But it's a rishus hayochid. So what is it? The chicken is ein bo dasli shoyel. Right? So what do? Is the dough tor or is the dough tummy? That's the case. So I have chickens, I have dough with a cheskes tyro, mashkim tmeim shem, nimtzu nekurim b'iso. And I find holes, peckings in the iso, totally. So the halach is, you give it a status that it's questionable, lo ochlen vo sorfi. You don't eat it, you don't burn it. But the fact is, why? But I have a chazaka, it has a cheskes tyro. No. It's a suffix. No, it's not bittel. Nothing bittel. No. What happens if a person's tummy and he puts his pinky to dough? It's touching. It's tumas maga. It's not the ingredient. Something still comes down with tummy. It's tummy. So if the liquid is tummy, the moment it touches the dough, it's gone. So I have a suffix. The dough has a chazaka, and the chicken is able dasli shoyel. So if that's the case, in that case, inu shesay yochid, you should go with the cheskes tyro. Nevertheless, they were machmir, and they made as if it would be yesh with dasli shoyel. It's a chumrah. So if it's a chumrah, even though it's tummy, what does that mean? Tolin v'lo ochli. You give it a questionable status. You don't eat it, but you don't burn it, because on Torah level, it's Torah. Because Torah level, I have a right to follow chazaka. Rabbinically, I say, no, you don't. So you can, but it's only rabbinically for me. You're not permitted to burn it. So these are the two cases. Omri b'shu ben Levi, loshanu mashkim levonim. That we say where it's a question whether the liquid was on the beak of the chicken when it pecked, that's only if it was what? Clear liquid. So you can't tell. Aba mashkin adumim. If, let's say, it pecked something, let's say you had wine that was tummy, or some other red liquid. So if its beak went in, you'd find red spots in the dough. So if you don't see red spots, it's clear that when it pecked, the beak was dry, it wasn't wet. There was no droplets of red liquid. Mashkin adumim im isa dinokir made the idea. If it pecked, you'd see the red spots. If you don't see red spots, it's clear that there was no liquid. So we're speaking about mashkin levoni. So Mar said, why? The dilma baltinu isa. Maybe when it pecked deep into the dough, and it's in the inner part of the dough is absorbed on the inner part of the dough, so even if it's red, it's not going to be noticeable. Okay? That's Rabbi Shua ben Levi's question. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan answers, Dov ze shama beribi upirushu shlo shama. He says, I heard something from Beribi. God Lador Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He says, I heard this from Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi was the God Lador. He says, but to understand why, I didn't understand. So he answered, now he's offering his own understanding. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Lo shanu ela b'mashkim tzlulim. Shebu shal tinik. Nikabo. Avo mashkim achurim lo. He says like this. If you have clear liquid, and a child looks into the liquid, you can see you have a mirror, it reflects your image. Right? Let's say you have murky liquid. Murky. If it's murky, you don't see your image on it. So if we're talking about that the liquid, the red liquid is clear, even if it's red, that you're not going to see. Because there's no substance. It only is, it's basically, it's pure. So therefore that will absorb me. But let's say the particles are there. So that means it's going to accumulate. Right? So the liquid may absorb, but you're going to have the residue of the red, of the makeup of the red substance. That you're going to see. That's easy as b'chalik. Lo ela mashkim tzlunim. Shebabua shel tinok dikabo. That the bua means the reflection of the child you can see. Avla churim. But if it's thick, it's murky, it's not pristine, lo, then it will be tummy. That's how we're differentiating it. So this is machlokes rishonim we had to learn. The Rambam learns differently. So they learned this is specifically going on the red liquid. Rambam says no. Rabbi Yochanan says this even on the white. Let's say you have water, and there are other particles in the water besides. Even if it's levonim, it's also tummy, because there's going to be something you're going to notice in the dough besides because it's more than liquid. The liquid contains some kind of particle, and that particle will be noticeable in the dough. So there's no difference if it's red or white, it's all the same thing. No, if there's no residue, the Gemara says you go after chazaka. Not chazaka. There's no reason, no. There's no basis to say that it's tummy. There's no basis to say it's tummy. No, it pecked with a dry beak. If it pecks with a dry beak, there's no problem. Only if it pecks with a wet beak. So if you have color, then you know the beak was wet. Okay, now there's a Tosis over here in Omen Aleph. Now Tosis makes the differentiation. The Chachomim say, we're saying, even though the Chachomim say, we say, Rubi b'chazok u'ma'odiv, nevertheless, Rabbi Yochanan says it's total. It's a suffix, you don't burn the truma, right? That's what we said by the child. Even though it's ein bo dasli shoel, and you should go after chazaka, nevertheless, I say it's tummy. What does tummy mean? Totally. It's a suffix. Rabbi Meir says no. We say there's a miut, since even though robe or metapchin, the children, but there's a minority, machlokes Rashi and Tosis, what it means. Whether it means a minority don't touch or a minority where somebody gave it to him, gave it to the child. So we take the miut and we associate it with the chazaka that weakens the robe, and therefore it's a suffix. Pirush. Vavi rov kiman de lesei. So according to Rabbi, if you say smoch mit l'chazaka, if you take the miut, the minority, and you associate with the chazaka, then you have no rov. Let me explain you what this means. Now, when does the Torah say you go after chazaka? Right? When? You have something that had a cheskes taira. Was the beak wet? Was it not wet? It's possible it was wet. Let's say it drank water. The water was tummy. It's still possible. What is Thursday? But since it can't be determined, when there's a suffix, you have the chazaka. Correct? Rameir says over here, the dough has a chazaka, the majority of children are contaminated, but a minority are not. The minority weakens the rov, and therefore you go after chazaka. What does that mean? What's the principle? Ruba chazaka, ruba adif. Why is rov better than the chazaka? No. I have a chazaka, I have a rov. Rov says the child's tummy. Right? Chazaka says the dough is torn. Although I have a minority, the rov says you don't deal with the minority. You go after rov. When does the Torah say you go after chazaka? When there's a suffix. If you have a suffix, Torah says, go after chazaka, go after presumed status. If you have a rov, there's no suffix. So therefore, chazaka never comes into play. You understand? Chazaka only comes into the picture if I have a suffix. But if rov already was ruled that there's no suffix, there's nothing to talk about. What's the chazaka? Chazaka, there's no application of chazaka. You understand? That's why ruba chazaka, ruba adif. Okay? But Rameir says, no, you do deal with if you deal with the miut weakens the chazaka. So therefore, I still have a suffix. Weakens the rov. It weakens the rov. And once the rov is weakened, I have a suffix. You have a suffix. Okay, what does Torah say? What do you do when you have a suffix? You go after chazaka.
Every row has a miut.
No, but that's the machlokes Rameir. That's the machlokes Rameir. When the Torah says you go after rov, the Torah say you just ignore the miut? Ignore it. Well, no, you don't ignore it. It's only what? Rameir says you don't ignore the miut. You don't ignore the miut. Rameir is chayshin lemiuta. Rameir says you have to take the miut into consideration, even when you have a rov. So if I have a chazaka besides the miut, so that's what we spoke about. If you have the case of the stores, there you have no chazaka. I just have rov. Everybody agrees. Even Rameir agrees there. The meat is kosher meat, without a question. Right? But over here, I have a chazaka. I have a chazaka and I have a miut. So if I have a miut, that means it's still questionable. So if I wouldn't have the chazaka, Rov says it's questionable. Rov ruled on the question. Ruled on it. But if I have a chazaka and I have a miut, no, that means there's a suffix. Chazaka rules on that. Because it's still a suffix. It's still a suffix. Because it's still a suffix. So
The other way, the meat is kosher. Chazaka is the meat is kosher. The rov that says the meat is not kosher, the meal, maybe it is. You think that even the rov will go back to the chazaka?
according to Rameir, well, here we see Rameir's Lakula. Rameir says the dough is kosher, is Torah. I don't know what that case would be. I mean, it's difficult. But I'm just saying, in our case, the dough is Torah. If you go after the rov, the dough is Tomei, but because there's a minority of children that are not Tomei, that's where the dough retains its Torah status. Right? So this is Lakula. Rameir is Lakula over here. The Chachomim L'chumra.
So how does it grow how does it ever is better than a chazaka? How does it ever better?
I just gave you the case. No, according to Rameir, Ruba Chazaka, Ruba is not Odif.
Right, exactly.
But that's what I'm going to learn Tosis. Tosis is going to cite cases that even Rameir agrees that Ruba Chazaka, Ruba is Odif. It's only because here it's a weaker robe, that's why it's different. To be continued.